A very warm welcome to Africa. Good morning. We are here again for the Tuesday edition. We will be bringing you the news making headlines across Africa. My name is Aina Raizakoyo and alongside me is Eshwen Berry.
And today is the Day of the Namibian Child. The Day of the Namibian Child celebrates the rights of the Namibian child. As the world and Namibia mark the 75th anniversary of the United Nations amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, safe reopening of schools became a priority for the government of Namibia and the United Nations. At the same time, we recognize the need to address the challenges ahead of us by adopting an agenda for inclusive social development if we are to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. This video, produced last year, provides a glimpse into the inequalities which exist in education, as well as how the economic impact, whether direct or indirect, in supporting children to make important life decisions. Being aware of the difficulties and social and economic inequalities that came to light even stronger during the COVID-19 pandemic, the United Nations acknowledges that more children are in need to be supported, and the system will continue to work with governments, businesses, and the international community to develop inclusive programs to address the inequalities that still exist. Let's have a look at this video produced last year.
Namibia's school closures in response to the COVID-19 pandemic have resulted in disruption to children's education, with more than 800,000 children missing school. As school doors reopen, the government has introduced innovative approaches in support of education and training continuity, from radio and television to take-home packages.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. In our top stories, Southern Africa, Chakwera asked to contain peace and security in the SADC region. Chairperson of the Catholic University of Malawi Council, Reverend Martin Mutumbuka, has asked President Lazarus Chakwera and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to bring back peace and security in Mozambique. Speaking Saturday during the graduation ceremony of the 19th graduation of the University of Chirazulu, Mutumbuka said the Southern African Development Community chairperson and his counterparts responsible for security should make sure that peace and stability are restored in Mozambique. He said Malawi is a peaceful country which must be protected so that people should continue to live peacefully. Bishop Mutumbuka then advised the graduates to be people of integrity and to associate with the poor, those with disability, and the vulnerable. In his remarks, President Lazarus Chakwera said people in the country should refrain from posting things on social media that can fuel violence in the country so that peace and stability should be preserved.
In our second story, Sudan's Burhan vows army reforms after coup attempt. The general who heads Sudan's ruling transitional authority on Sunday pledged to reform the army days after a failed coup. We are going to reorganize the armed forces. Partisan activities are banned in the army, Sovereign Council Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan said at the opening of a military hospital in Khartoum. The armed forces are committed to holding elections on the date fixed for ending the transition in 2023, he said. After that, the army will leave the political scene and its role will be limited to protecting the country. Sudan is led by a civilian military administration under an August 2019 power-sharing deal signed after President Omar al-Bashir's ouster by the military in April that year following mass protests against his iron-fisted rule. Paramilitary leader and Burhan's deputy in the Sovereign Council, Mohamed Hamdan Daglo, has pointed a finger of blame at politicians after the failed coup. Politicians are the main cause behind coups because they have neglected the average citizen and are more concerned fighting over how they can stay in power, Daglo said.
In our next story, Mozambique, Nyusi reluctant to claim victory in anti-terrorist fight. Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi on Saturday declared that it is the desire of all those who want prosperity to see the natural gas projects in the northern province of Cabo Delgado reactivated. Rwandan President Paul Kagame was the guest of honor at the celebration of Mozambique Armed Forces Day, marking the 57th anniversary of the launch of the national liberation struggle against Portuguese colonial rule on the 25th of September 1964. He also visited the 1,000-strong Rwandan contingent, which has been supporting Mozambique in its resistance against terrorists linked to the self-styled Islamic State. Nyusi told reporters that neither Mozambique nor Rwanda are proclaiming victory in the fight against terrorism. Yes, we are in the face of success, he added, but we aren't singing or celebrating. The success includes liberating the town of Moquimbao da Praia from ISIS control, consolidating Mozambican control over Palma, and driving the terrorists from the main bases in Mbao, south of Moquimbao da Praia. Kagame said Mozambique is in charge of the joint operation. It was the Mozambican authorities who determined the type of military operation being taken.
Soweto Pride celebrations mark end of harsh South African third wave. Wrapped in rainbow flags, dozens of South Africans celebrated Pride on Saturday in the historic black township of Soweto and the end of an especially harsh coronavirus third wave for their community. The pandemic amplified challenges faced by LGBTQI+ people in the country by forcing them to stay at home with families or communities that didn't always accept their identity. community. Given the additional stress of the pandemic, Nombande said it was a boost for the LGBTQI+ community to have the city of Johannesburg help sponsor the 17th annual Soweto Pride, a place highly symbolic of struggle in the young democracy. We still even witness issues of homophobia within our families. You can't even come out to your family. How do you come out to the world out there when you can't even come out to your family? Said Shepiso Liu, who's 32 and a registered nurse. We matter. Our artists matter. Our creativity matters. Our talents matter. And our work matters. We are also contributors to society. So such events really make me feel proud, she said.
In our next story, thousands of Senegalese worshippers converge in Touba. Undeterred by traffic jams and threats of COVID-19, crowds of worshippers have converged on Senegal's holy city of Touba on Sunday as part of the annual celebration of the Morande Brotherhood. The Grand Magal pilgrimage is one of the most important dates in the country as it marks the date French colonial authorities exiled Morande founder Keshi Bamba, also known as Syringe Tamba. Gatherings were cancelled in March last year as the pandemic reached the country of 16 million. The celebrations went ahead last October, but worshippers had to wear masks to observe social distancing. This time, the authorities believe they can take the more relaxed approach. As well as being a religious festival, the Grand Magal has also political dimension. Many senior politicians travel to Tomba to participate in the event. Senegalese authorities have recorded over 73,000 coronavirus cases to date, with 1,855 deaths.
Lesotho tops world homicide statistics. Lesotho has again recorded yet another brutal murder of a police officer, the third such killing in less than 3 weeks and the sixth in 3 months. This, coupled with rampant murders of ordinary civilians, which happen almost on a daily basis, has catapulted Lesotho to within the top 10 countries with the highest homicide rates in the world. Neighboring South Africa, with 33.97 murders per 100,000 people, is the only other SADC country in the global top 10 rankings for the highest murders in the world. Apart from the issue of political will identified by analysts, Lesotho could also consider the advice of the United Nations Global Study on Homicide 2019, which identified organized crime, gender stereotypes, inequality, unemployment, political instability, proliferation of firearms and drugs as some of the main drivers of murders.
New Nyiragongo lava lake lets DR Congo volcano breathe, expert says. The reappearance of the lava lake in the crater of Nyiragongo volcano in eastern DR Congo is a good sign, experts said on Sunday. 4 months after a major eruption killed 32 people. Nyiragongo's eruption on the 22nd of May to 23rd of May spewed out lava that buried homes in its wake, stopping just short of the northern outskirts of Goma, a city of some 600,000 people. Celestina Mahida, the scientist director of the Goma Volcanology Observatory, said the reappearance of the lava lake in Nyiragongo's crater dates from the 18th of September. It is a natural sign. The appearance of this lake of fire in the crater will minimize earthquakes in the volcanic area of Goma. After the eruption, the disappearance of lava from the crater sparked fear that it remained buried under Goma.
Congolese pastor gets 37 years in prison for rape and illegally living in South Africa. A Congolese pastor with God is Love ministry has been sentenced to 37 years in jail for multiple offenses, including rape by the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria. Bafomba Willie Emeka was convicted last week on 19 counts, 3 counts of sexual assault, illegally living in the country, and possessing a fake permanent residence permit. During the trial, the court heard word that Emeka used the same modus operandi when targeting the women. He told them they had problems and he needed to pray for them and bless them to help them. Emeka told the woman babysitting his children that she would not conceive a child if she didn't sleep with him. Their assault and rape only stopped after the victims' women stopped attending church.
In our next story, draconian snooping law. Parliament has scrapped a proposed draconian snooping law that would have allowed the government to monitor the private communications of citizens. The proposal law has been withdrawn to allow for more consultation with stakeholders who were not consulted when it was originally drafted. The Portfolio Committee on the Prime Minister, Ministries and Departments, Governance, Foreign Relations and Information Cluster said that the proposed Communication Regulations 2021 has been created without necessary input of key stakeholders. The bill sought to empower the state to fully monitor cyberspace, define cybercrimes, and prescribe penalties that include fines and lengthy prison sentences. It sought to establish a central database with details of citizens to be run by the government. Not only would citizens, including visitors, be required to register their SIM card, they would also be required to register their communication devices as well as storing their biometrics in the database. The regulations also required all mobile communication services to provide and providers of mobile devices to take down people's biometrics details along with proof of residence before handing them over to the LCA for storage in the central database system. However, the Parliament Portfolio Committee this week said there was a need for stakeholders and the public consultation to ensure that all stakeholders' input is included in the subordinate law. The committee said more public consultations were needed on the law. It had thus decided to disallow it for now to enable its reassessment.
Namibia detects new strain of foot and mouth disease. Namibia has detected a new strain of foot and mouth disease in the country that has infected thousands of cattle, the Agriculture Minister Carl Schlettwein said in a statement on Thursday. The viral disease, which causes lesions and lameness in cattle, sheep and other cloven-hoofed animals, but does not affect people, was first detected in May in the Zambezi region bordering neighboring Zambia. The minister said the new strain was detected in early August for the first time in the southern African nation, adding that investigations found it was introduced into the country from Zambia through illegal cross-border movement of livestock. Schlettwein warned that meat exports from Namibia, which is allowed to export beef to China, EU and United States, could be affected by the latest outbreak. It will also negatively affect the trade agreements that Namibia recently signed with countries such as Ghana on the export of meat and meat products, he said.
In our next story, fist fight as two men arrive to pay lobola for the same girl on the same day. A fight broke out recently in Beatrice after two men and their colleague fought for the same woman they had come to pay lobola for. A local Beatrice pastor, Mervyn Ratindira, has since confirmed the incident and is now also demanding 10% of the bridal price from Ratindira of the Higher Faith Ministry. It is reported that the 27-year-old Musonza was in a relationship with George Mbirimi, who she left after the latter kept giving empty promises on when he would pay lobola for her. Musonza later fell in love with another man, Martin Marisa, who is a businessman in their area. 3 months later, Marisa visited his new in-laws to pay for lobola for Musonza. Birimi, however, came to Musonza's homestead on the same day after being tipped off about the lobola ceremony. He brought his colleagues and $620, which he intended to pay as bride price. His rival, Marisa, had $5,500. A fierce fight broke out. Birimi and his team were defeated and fled the Musonza homestead with their cash. The lobola ceremony proceeded after the fight with Marisa's father-in-law even bragging that he was going to buy himself a vehicle from the Lobola money. However, Ratindira, the pastor, is also now demanding his 10% of the share of bride price, as his prayers are the ones who enabled Musoza to find a boyfriend and get her married.
What a whirlwind. What a whirlwind. Listen, just in life, there's a thing that the young people call it an L, you know. Take your L with pride, you see.
Be within your L.
Now you're forced to take your L after going there with less money, my brother. All right, into the next story. Police arrest 3 for being found with live pangolins. Police in Lilongwe arrested 3 men for being found with 2 live pangolins, which they were selling for 7 million kwacha. Deputy publicist for Lilongwe Police Station, Sergeant Foster Benjamin, identified the suspects as Lonis Songa, Moses Kambani, and Charles Benjamin. They were arrested on Sunday at Msundwe Trading Center. The suspects were offering for sale the listed animals at a price of 7 million kwacha, he explained. The law enforcers immediately arrested the suspects for seizing the mammals. The 3 suspects will appear in court soon to answer the charge of being found in possession of specimen of listed animals. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. We have so much more for you right up until 8 a.m. Stick around. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. Right now, we're going to take a trip to the House of Stone, Zimbabwe, so we can hear from Talent Gore about the news on the ground. Good morning, Talent. How are you?
Good morning. I'm all right. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Now, in your first story, MDC Alliance Vice President Tendai Biti and 5 other members of Parliament who were called from Parliament have been readmitted to Parliament by the High Court. Could you please get into this?
MDC Alliance Vice President Tendai Biti and 5 others who were recalled from Parliament in March this year have been reinstated into Parliament by the High Court. In March this year, they were recalled by Speaker of Parliament, who said that he had received a letter from the People's Democratic Party supposedly recalling them from Parliament. However, the six members who were recalled from Parliament then took the matter to the High Court, and a high judge has ruled out that Benjamin Rukanda, who declared himself PDP's Secretary General, had no legal standing to dismiss the 6. The PDP, which was actually a coalition parties that contested at the 2018 elections as MDC Alliance, but following the election, the party was dissolved and its senior members joined the structures of a new, fully fledged party called the MDC Alliance. And they have since said, the High Court has since ruled out that the recall was unlawful and void, and that Rukanda had no right whatsoever to recall Tendai Biti and 5 others from Parliament. So the 6 have been recalled to Parliament, and they're going to be in Parliament. They're going to be taking proceedings in Parliament soon. We are yet to see when they will return to Parliament, but the High Court has ruled out that the judgment or the recall of them was unlawful and void.
All right, the villagers in Uzumba district face eviction after a Chinese mining company started mining granite stones in the communal land.
Villagers in Uzumba, Mashonaland East Province, are up in arms with a Chinese mining company which is evicting people from that area to pave way for granite mining. So the villagers in that area have said that there are more than 70 families who are going to be affected by this eviction, and that it was very unfair for them to lose their ancestral home. The Chinese company apparently told the villagers in that area that they had no right to the land since they had no title deeds to it. So they said that they were given the go-ahead by the government to mine the granite stone. They also said that the Chinese company also said that they had powerful people in ZANU-PF and government whom they are linked to, so they had been given the right to mine the granite stone. So about 300 hectares of land is going to be used by the Chinese as a mining site. So for more than 70 families are going to be displaced, are going to be affected by this decision. So the government went to the area on a fact-finding mission, and they said that they're going to call the Chinese mining company and the villagers to discuss the issue at hand.
All right, now in your last story, COVID-19 in schools being considered a health time bomb. Could you tell us about that?
The COVID-19 crisis in schools has been described as a time bomb. The doctors and the Zimbabwe Teachers Union have said that government's call to not close schools was very disastrous, as schools are reporting and recording new cases every day. They've said that apparently there was a school that recorded more than 200. There was a school that recorded 200 cases in a day. So it was a time bomb, and they called on the government to at least close the schools for now. They said that the government apparently last week said that to close the schools, the closure of schools was unnecessary, as the cases that were reported at the schools was insignificant. But the teachers' unions have said that they are recording cases each and every day, and they called on the government to take action to at least close the schools and also provide testing kits The teachers' unions are saying that they are no testing kits at the schools, and they need more testing kits, and at least provide facilities whereby if a pupil has tested positive for COVID-19, they can at least isolate at designated areas. They say that the government has not done anything of that sort as yet, so they called on the government to at least work on it and make sure that the schools are properly maintained and they do not become a disaster.
All right. Thank you very much, Talent, for bringing us the news from Zimbabwe.
You're welcome, and thank you very much for having me.
It's always good having you on Africa Good Morning. Next up, let's have a look at the weather forecast.
A climate change and adaptive land management workshop is underway in Windhoek with the aim of responding to the global needs of managing the environment, understanding and mitigating the effects of climate change. The workshop started yesterday and will end on Wednesday. This insert was compiled by our colleague Claudia Reiter, and here is that.
A climate change and adaptive land management workshop is underway in Windhoek at the moment with the aim of responding to the global need of managing the environment, understanding and mitigating the effects of climate change. The workshop started yesterday and it will end on Wednesday. It is organized by SASCAL in collaboration with the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research and Global Monitoring for Environment and Security. Speaking at the opening ceremony, SASCAL Program Coordinator in Namibia, Eric Ndala, said that Namibia, its people and the natural resources are extremely vulnerable to the predicted impacts of climate change. Therefore, Namibia needs to be thoroughly prepared for the short, medium and long-term effects of climate change and find solutions to these. He also added that it is crucial that all current developmental efforts are being made based on scientifically informed decisions in order for government and heads of state not to compromise the future of our generations.
Out of mutual cooperation between Africa and Europe, with a focus on Earth observation systems, it tries to respond to the global need to manage the environment, understand and mitigate the effects of climate change, and ensure civil security by providing information to policymakers, scientists, private sector, and the public at large. Therefore, this workshop comes at the right time to reveal trends in the use of Earth observation data, to monitor and assess wetland conditions, threats to sustainable utilization of wetland resources, as well as updating stakeholders on how climate change variability and the drought is continually affecting sub-Saharan Africa's surface water resources. Climate change is getting in the way of implementing national development plans and at the realization of the Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, and so on. For example, Namibia, the region, its people, and its natural resources are extremely vulnerable to predicted impacts of climate change. It is also apparent that although some efforts are underway to test adaptation approaches and understand the impact of climate change better, Namibia, as well as the entire region, needs to be thoroughly prepared in the short, medium, and long term. And SASCA can offer such solutions.
Our region and the world at large is witnessing several threats on the wetland ecosystem, and yet wetlands provide many benefits to society. Therefore, investing in research to restore their integrity is essential to the region and also to the world.
GMS in Africa is just the implementation of the Agenda 2063. Why? As you know, the Agenda 2063 is the compass African countries, the 55 countries, gave themselves for the upcoming 50 years with respect to the sustainable development, socio-economic development of Africa. Therefore, the vision behind the Agenda 2063, it is an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa.
Can you compare COVID-19 vaccines? Which one is the best? WHO's Science in 5 has a look at these questions. Up next.
This is the new one-dose COVID-19 vaccine from Johnson & Johnson. In early March, more than 6,000 doses were supposed to be shipped to the city of Detroit, Michigan. But the mayor said no thanks.
Moderna and Pfizer are the best, and I am going to do everything I can to make sure the residents of the city of Detroit get the best.
He was referring to these numbers, the vaccine's efficacy rates. The vaccines from Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna have super high efficacy rates, 95 and 94%. But Johnson & Johnson, just 66. And if you only look at these numbers, it's natural to think that these vaccines are worse than these. But that assumption is wrong. These numbers are arguably not even the most important measure of how effective these vaccines are. To understand what is, you first have to understand what vaccines are even supposed to do. A vaccine's efficacy rate is calculated in large clinical trials, when the vaccine is tested on tens of thousands of people. Those people are broken into two groups. Half get the vaccine and half get a placebo. Then they're sent out to live their lives while scientists monitor whether or not they get COVID-19 over several months. In the trial for Pfizer-BioNTech, for example, there were 43,000 participants. In the end, 170 people were infected with COVID-19. And how those people fall into each of these groups determines a vaccine's efficacy. If the 170 were evenly split, that would mean you're just as likely to get sick with the vaccine as without it, so it would have a 0% efficacy. If all 170 were in the placebo group and 0 people who got the vaccine were sick, the vaccine would have an efficacy of 100%. With this particular trial, there were 162 in the placebo group and just 8 in the vaccine group. It means those who had the vaccine were 95% less likely to get COVID-19. The vaccine had a 95% efficacy. Now, this doesn't mean if 100 people are vaccinated, 5 of them will get sick. Instead, that 95% number applies to the individual. So each vaccinated person is 95% less likely than a person without a vaccine to get sick each time they're exposed to COVID-19. And every vaccine's efficacy rate is calculated in the same way. But each vaccine's trial might be done in very different circumstances.
So one of the biggest considerations here when we look at these numbers is the timing in which these clinical trials were performed.
This is the number of daily COVID-19 cases in the US since the pandemic began. The Moderna trial was done completely in the US, here in the summer. The Pfizer-BioNTech trial was primarily based in the US too, and at the same time. Johnson & Johnson, however, held their US trial at this time, when there were more opportunities for participants to be exposed to infections. And most of their trial took place in other countries, primarily South Africa and Brazil. And in these other countries, not only were case rates high, but the virus itself was different. The trials took place as variants of COVID-19 emerged and became dominant infections in these countries, variants that are more likely to get participants sick. In South Africa, most of the cases in the Johnson & Johnson trial were that of the variant, not the original strain that was in the US over the summer. And despite that, it still significantly reduced infections.
If you're trying to make one-to-one head-to-head comparisons between vaccines, they need to have been studied in the same trial with the same inclusion criteria in the same parts of the world at the same time.
If we were to take Pfizer and Moderna's vaccine and redo their clinical trial at the same time that we did J&J's clinical trial, we might see quite different efficacy numbers for those.
These efficacy numbers really just tell you what happened in each vaccine's trial, not exactly what will happen in the real world. But many experts argue this isn't even the best number to judge a vaccine by anyway, because preventing any infection at all is not always the point of a vaccine.
the goal of a vaccine program for COVID-19 is not necessarily to get to COVID-0, but it's to tame this virus, to defang it, to remove its ability to cause serious disease, hospitalization, and death.
It helps to look at the different outcomes of an exposure to COVID-19 like this. The best case scenario is you don't get sick at all. The worst case is death. In between, there's being hospitalized, severe to moderate symptoms, or having no symptoms at all. In the absolute best circumstances, vaccines give you protection all the way to here. But realistically, that isn't the main objective of COVID-19 vaccines. The real purpose is to give your body enough protection to cover these possibilities. So if you do get an infection, it feels more like a cold than something you'd be hospitalized for. And this is one thing that every one of these COVID-19 vaccines do well. In all these trials, while some people in the placebo groups were hospitalized or even died from COVID-19, not one fully vaccinated person in any of these trials was hospitalized or died from COVID-19.
One thing that I wish that Mayor would have understood was that all three vaccines have essentially 100% effectiveness in protecting from death.
The mayor of Detroit did backtrack and said he'd start taking Johnson & Johnson doses because it's still highly effective against what we care about most. Efficacy matters, but it doesn't matter the most. The question isn't which vaccine will protect you from any COVID infection, but which one will keep you alive or out of the hospital? Which one will help end the pandemic? And that's any of them.
The best vaccine right now for you is the one that you're offered.
With each shot that goes in someone's arm, we get closer to the end of this pandemic.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. It's time for us to dive straight into your economic news stories. In our first story, Christo Wiese resigns from Gemfield's board. Gemfields advises that Dr. Christo Wiese resigned as a non-executive director of the company on and with effect from 23 September 2021. The company is in the process of confirming a replacement for Dr. Wiese. Gemfields is a world-leading supplier of responsibly sourced colored gemstones. Gemfields has developed a proprietary grading system and a pioneering auction and trading platform to provide a consistent supply of colored gemstones to downstream markets, a key component of Gemfields' business model, and has played an important role in the growth of the global colored gemstone sector.
In our next story, drilling campaign under the Sasol PSA project starts 10 days ahead of the planned schedule. On the 16th of September 2021, the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Ernesto Tonella, visited the Sasol Gas Central Processing Facility in Tamane in Hasaro District, the drilling platform in Pande Govoro District. The minister's visit was intended to get acquaintance of the progress of the ongoing activities under the production sharing contract, whose integrated drilling campaign started on the 7th of August, 10 days ahead of the initial plan. The PSA project will produce 23 pentajoules of gas per year for 25 years. Most of this gas will be used to generate 450 MW of electricity at the new Temen Tepal power plant to produce 30,000 tons of LPG cooking gas per year.
Qualified Namibians shun SOE boards. Minister of Public Enterprises Leon Euster has bemoaned the culture of reputable and qualified Namibians opting not to serve on parastatal boards because of political interference and the poor implementation of corporate governance in the architecture sector. What is more important now is to get the best people to serve on these boards, he said. Euster reiterated that the fiscus has now adopted a strong stance of not spending money it does not have to bail parastatals out due to pressing commitments elsewhere. We have sort of said enough is enough when it comes to bailouts, as these are not sustainable. So the parastatals themselves need to come up with future plans that work and can be executed within their budgets, he said.
In our next story, Namibia launches the first SADC anti-trafficking program. Namibia welcomed the first container control program in Southern African Development Community region at Walvis Bay on Friday. The program, which was launched by Namibia Revenue Agency, focuses on the interception of illicit trafficking, including wildlife, drugs, arms, strategic dual goods, and other illicit items. It is an initiative of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes and the World Customs Organization, and will be jointly administered by official RAM-RA and the Namibian Ports Authority, the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, and the Namibian Police.
That brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Up next, economic indicators. All right, it's time for us to get into your sports stories, and we start off in Namibia. Blame game over crumbling Sam Nujoma Stadium. The Ministry of Youth, Sport and National Services and the Windhoek municipality have been citing inadequate funds and a lack of governmental support as key reasons for the poor state of stadiums in Namibia. The sorry state of sport facilities, especially of the Sam Nujoma Stadium, is one of the reasons why Namibia has been banned from hosting regional and international football matches locally. Last week, a director in the Sports Ministry, Joanne Manuel, blamed the situation on a lack of adequate funding. The City of Windhoek's manager of parks, sports, recreation and cemeteries, Ukaduvaya Kadombaide, said the municipality has also been struggling to secure funds for the sport development over the years. Kadombaide said the Sports Ministry must also develop and upgrade stadiums at other local authorities to ease the burden on the Sam Nujoma Stadium.
Alaphilippe storms to victory again at Cycling World Championships. A title holder, Julian Alaphilippe, won a Cycling World Championships road race on Sunday after dropping all his rivals following a series of solo attacks in Flanders cobbled hills. The Frenchman attacked from 50 kilometers out to create an elite group of 17 riders, then again 15 kilometers to edge away to a solo victory in an epic 268 kilometers struggle through the cycling heartland. As the road race world champion, Alaphilippe will race next year wearing a fumbled rainbow jersey, another year after winning in similar fashion at the 2020 event in Italy.
In boxing, Usyk dethrones Joshua as world heavyweight champion. Alexander Usyk ended Anthony Joshua's reign as world heavyweight champion with a stunning unanimous points decision victory over his fellow 2012 Olympic champion in London on Saturday. His victory, which extended Usyk's perfect record as a professional to 19 wins from as many fights, saw him become just the third boxer after Evander Holyfield of the United States and Britain's David Haye to win both the cruiserweight and heavyweight world titles. At 34, Usyk is 3 years older than Joshua, and he was also giving away 3 inches in height as well as nearly 9 kilograms in weight. But none of that made much difference as he followed David Ruiz in becoming just the second professional boxer to defeat Joshua.
In our next story, Senza apologizes to Argentina after Pumas left out of photoshoot. Rugby Championship organizers Senza and Rugby Australia have apologized to Argentina after the Pumas were angered by being left out of a captain photo shoot which included the 3 other Southern Hemisphere nations keepers. Argentina coach Mario Ledesma said his players and staff felt disrespected after seeing photos and videos of Australian, New Zealand and South African captains published in the media after Friday's photo shoot in Townsville, Australia. Senza and Rugby Australia management would like to apologize to Argentina Rugby for the error that led to a photograph being published in the media that misinterpreted the rugby championship in that it omitted Argentina, the governing body said in a statement on Monday.
All right, in the last of our sports stories, England's Moeen Ali retires from Test cricket. England all-rounder Moeen Ali on Monday announced he was retiring from Test cricket to focus on his white ball career, saying the format's intensity can be too much sometimes. Moeen began his Test career batting at number 6 and offering part-time off-spin, scoring a maiden Test century against Sri Lanka at Headingley in 2014. He was named man of the series in England's 3-1 series win against South Africa in 2017, becoming the first cricketer to take 25 wickets and score more than 250 runs in a 4-match series. He became the first British Asian since Nasser Hussain in 2003 to captain an England team when he skippered the 2020 side against Australia last year. His comments about enjoying cricket come amid fears for the mental well-being of England players who have lived in biosecure bubbles during the coronavirus pandemic to allow matches to take place. All right, that brings us to the end of our sports news updates. After the break, your headlines. Africa Good Morning has been streaming live from 7 a.m. and here are the headlines from today's top stories. Southern Africa, Chakwera asked to contain peace and security in SADC region. Sudan's Burhan vows army reforms after coup attempt. Mozambique's Nyusi reluctant to claim victory in anti-terrorist fight. Soweto Pride celebrations mark end of harsh South African third wave. Christo Wiese resigns from Gemfield's board. Blame game over crumbling Sam Nujoma Stadium in Namibia. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Tuesday edition of Africa Good Morning. We do welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can email them to us. Our email is agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. Alternatively, we do have a website. It's called One Up 2, and we are also on Facebook and Twitter. That's at Africa Good Morning. Do not forget, we are in the middle of a pandemic. Please wear your mask, sanitize, and still avoid unnecessary public gatherings. And on that note, is all our love, all our light.
Until tomorrow, Swera Jaganaka.